In this microlesson, you will learn the basics of PvM Invention perks. A microlesson is a short and to-the-point video guide that teaches you about RuneScape. This time, one of our combat and PvM experts, Thaxi, who is also a teacher on the Raid FC staff, is going to teach us about perks.
Perks and Invention in general are often overwhelming in-game, and our goal today will be to discuss perks for someone new to PvM. Today we're going to tell you what perks you need and which perks you might want to consider using. Please note this guide is designed for players who can boost over level 100 Invention and who have unlocked Ancient Invention through Archaeology or using a blueprint brought from another player. Defensive perks and perks commonly used as switches may be covered in a future microlesson but won't be covered today. A standard combat setup usually includes 6 important primary perks, 2 on your weapon and 4 on your armor, and your preference from a selection of secondary options to pair with those. We'll start with armor. For the primary perks on armor, you typically will want to do more damage-focused perks on one piece and more defensive-focused perks on the other. Generally speaking, people do damage perks on their bodies. And those perks usually include the Crackling and Biting perks. Crackling will do an extra chunk of damage every 30 seconds, and your Biting perk will increase your critical strike chance. Rank 2 for Biting is fairly cheap and affordable, but Biting 4 does involve disassembling Araxor weapons, which can get fairly expensive. For your legs, the core perks generally are going to be Impatient and Enhanced Devoted. Impatient offers you extra adrenaline gain, which can be very nice for both tank rotations or for building adrenaline back after you use an ultimate. And Enhanced Devoted, which takes both slots so it cannot be comboed with anything, causes your protection prayers to block more damage, usually resulting in about a 30% additional damage reduction. For your secondary perk options, we'll talk through 6 potential perks that you could combo with the 3 slots you have available above. The first 2 of those are Venomblood and Mobile. Venomblood is permanent anti-poison and is very helpful for a lot of Slayer, as well as bossing for Nex, Araxor, Grigorovic, or the Angel of Death. Mobile halves the cooldown of Surge, Escape, Bladed Dive, and Barge, but causes those abilities to gain no adrenaline when used in combat. Our next 2 perks are Relentless and Devoted. Relentless is an RNG perk that offers extra adrenaline. It's fairly straightforward to obtain it with the Crackling perk, and they are often paired together. Devoted is a situational perk, because it plays poorly with Enhanced Devoted, but can in some situations result in a slightly increased damage reduction from that perk combo. Our last perks to talk about for our optional perks for armor are going to be Genocidal as well as Dragon, Demon, or Undead Slayer. Genocidal will offer you extra damage as you continue through a Slayer task, and the Dragon, Demon, and Undead Slayer perks offer extra damage against those monsters, which does impact relevant bosses at places like the Elite Dungeons, or for some of the bosses like Queen Black Dragon, etc. For weapons, we're going to start with the Precise perk. This perk is almost omnipresent. It gives the highest damage increase of any perk that isn't a switch. If you have no other perks on your gear, at least make a Gizmo with a low rank of Precise. The damage increase is pretty noticeable. It's cheap alone or paired with the Genocidal perk, or it can be expensively paired with Aftershock 1 or a couple of other options. Your alternative for your second primary perk for your weapons includes Equilibrium or Aftershock. Equilibrium is our standard entry perk. It pairs well with Ruthless 2 or 3 or Relentless 2 at higher Invention levels, and can be fairly cheaply obtained. Aftershock will give you an additional chunk of damage every so often, but is very expensive and must also go on any switches that you use with that weapon setup. For secondary perk options to pair with your core perks for weapons, we're going to talk about Ruthless, which again, fairly easy to pair with Equilibrium, or you can pair it with Precise 6 at a rank 1 if you need to. It offers additional damage for slaying foes, and good option for both Slayer and bosses with additional damage dealers. The alternative perk would be something like Caroming, which is great for use if you have the greater Ricochet ability or the greater Chain abilities unlocked, to get some additional damage out of those on either multiple targets or extra damage onto your core target. The last 2 perks we'll discuss today are Lunging and Invigorating. These perks are not typically used on your primary weapon setup, but there are niche cases where they are important to have. Lunging is often used on a Masterwork Spear of Annihilation, as it increases the damage done with your bleed abilities, which combos very nicely with the passive on that weapon. Invigorating is a perk that will grant you additional adrenaline from your basic attacks, and therefore combos very nicely with both Fortic auto-attacking and especially with the Fractured Staff of Armadil special attack. I've mentioned it a few times as we're going through this, but it is important to consider cost when creating your perk setup. The cost for the basic perk setup described in this video is about 10 to 20 million coins for a set of armor and weapon perks, with additional costs to obtain higher ranks of things like the Biting perk or to add on Aftershock. On screen now are a couple example setups, including some options for a budget setup and then a more expensive setup. Something I want you to take away from this lesson is the idea that the secondary perks you choose are entirely up to your preference, and there are many viable combinations depending on the content you enjoy. These are just some possible suggestions for you to build from. Please note, this microlesson is intentionally brief. The points laid out in this lesson are general rules, and it's important to set up your perks according to your own preferences. You can find perk recipes and more information about the perks themselves at the wiki pages linked in the description below. If you feel we've missed anything, maybe a favorite or niche perk combo, or if you have any questions for us, feel free to add them in the comments below. And if you found this video useful, like and subscribe.